The signal came without warning, a deep, broken pulse that echoed across the void, too desperate to ignore. Most who heard it turned away, not because they couldn't help, but because they knew better. The Viren homeworld, Yasra, had fallen. Silent weeks ago, its majestic cities and crystal spires now shrouded in dark mist. Rumors spoke of monsters, of a black tide that devoured everything. But Earth listened. Earth had always listened when no one else would. Sergeant Lex Ryder was already there, trapped, left behind, 3 weeks earlier. She had led a recon unit to Yasra, sent to study strange seismic readings near the equator. The Viren had been friendly enough, all diplomatic smiles and four-fingered handshakes. But things had gone bad fast. The creatures came from beneath the soil, slicing up through the earth like blades through silk. Lex's squad had been torn apart, one by one, swallowed by shadows with teeth. Now she moved alone through the burning ruins of a forest city, rifle drawn, boots crunching over glass and bone. The trees here were alien tall, pale blue things with webbed leaves and veins that glowed faintly in the dark. Fire flickered between them, lighting up blood-slick stones and crushed vehicles. Somewhere in the smoke, something screamed. Not human, not Viren. Something worse. Lex pressed herself against a half-shattered wall and checked her gear. Her armor, once fresh from the drop bay, was scorched and dented. Her helmet visor flickered. The rifle's ammo counter blinked red. 4 shots left, no grenades, no backup. But she was alive. Movement caught her eye. Down the ravine below, dozens of the creatures scuttled between the trees, long-limbed things with exoskeletons like jagged obsidian. Some ran on 6 legs, others slithered. Their shapes didn't match any known species, but their hunger was clear. They tore into a fallen Viren hovercraft, pulling screaming soldiers from the wreckage and ripping them apart. One Viren tried to run. A creature pounced from the shadows and drove a tail spike through his chest, pinning him to the wall. Lex swallowed hard. She knew the creatures didn't just kill. They hunted, learned, adapted. She moved. Keeping low, she slipped along the ledge of a crumbling cliff, watching, memorizing their patterns. Her boots left no sound. Her breath came slow and quiet. She counted every second. If she timed it right, she could reach the old communications tower hidden beyond the ridge. Maybe get a signal out. Maybe call the fleet. A deep rumble shook the ground. Lex stopped cold. From the darkness below, a new shape emerged, massive, almost twice the height of a transport tank. It moved with purpose, a leader, a commander. Its body shimmered with metallic growths. Its eyes, if they were eyes, glowed, red and unblinking. Lex narrowed her eyes. That one had intelligence. She backed up carefully, stepping over a fallen beam. A low growl rolled through the air. Something behind her. Too late. A creature dropped from the ceiling, landing on all fours just feet away. It sniffed the air, tilting its head. Its face was split by rows of bone-colored mandibles. Slime dripped from its fangs. It hissed. Lex froze. Then she moved. She spun, slammed the rifle butt into the creature's jaw, and dove over the ledge. Midair, she twisted, landing on a platform below and rolling behind a shattered satellite dish. The creature roared and lunged after her, but she was already on her feet. She ran, past fallen towers, past burning trees. The air filled with howls. Behind her, the swarm woke. Dozens, maybe hundreds, began to move. She could hear the skitter of claws, the pounding of armored limbs. The sky above was stained with smoke. The whole jungle trembled as something massive shifted beneath the earth. Lex reached the cliff's edge. Below, the ravine opened wide, impossible to jump. She looked back. The creatures were coming fast, too many to fight. She yanked a detonator from her belt, slammed it onto the rock face, and sprinted to the side. Boom. The cliff shattered behind her, tumbling into the gorge with a roar. Flames erupted upward, taking half the swarm with them. The blast wave knocked her off her feet. She hit the ground hard, dazed, blood trickling down her cheek. Silence. For a moment, only the crackle of fire remained. Then she heard it, a faint signal, barely there. Static, then a voice, broken but human. She crawled toward her helmet, slapped it on, and tuned in. The voice repeated, "Any surviving unit. This is Earth Command. A fleet is inbound. Hold position if possible. Reinforcements are coming." Lex stared out over the ruined jungle. Flames rose high. Alien bodies lay still. But it wasn't over. Not even close. She stood slowly, wiping blood from her eyes. The creatures would return, stronger, smarter, but Earth was coming, and she'd be ready. She raised her rifle and spoke to the fire. "You picked the wrong planet to infest." The jungle burned behind them, and the sky above shimmered with smoke and falling ash. Lex Rider ran at full sprint, her breath ragged, armor scorched, and eyes locked forward. Each step shook the cracked earth beneath her boots. The creatures were behind them. She could feel it, not just chasing. Hunting. A shriek tore through the trees, followed by the crash of something massive barreling through the undergrowth. Spined beasts, covered in armored plates and sprouting barbed tentacles, slammed aside trees like matchsticks. Lex and the Viren scientist, Dr. Carrick, weaved through the chaos. Carrick stumbled, coughing from the thick air, clutching a shimmering data tablet close to his chest. He had barely survived the last swarm, and his pale skin glistened with sweat. The two of them dove beneath a crumbling stone arch, a remnant of some ancient Varen shrine, and slid into cover. Lex pulled the last detonator from her belt. She slammed it onto the pillar behind them, kissed her teeth, and shouted, "Heads down!" The explosion ripped through the jungle, lighting up the night like a false sun. The pressure wave tore bark from the glowing trees and sent flaming debris tumbling through the air. Screams rose from the swarm, injured, enraged. But even as fire licked at the treetops and smoke coiled like snakes, Lex knew it wasn't enough. They just kept coming. She checked her rifle again. 2 shots left. She glanced at Carrick, who was trembling. "This way," he gasped, pulling her toward an ancient temple buried in the jungle. The place was shattered, half buried in roots and earth, with cracked pillars and broken steps leading into darkness. Inside, dozens of Varen civilians huddled in silence. Some were wounded, some prayed. None of them looked hopeful. Lex scanned the room, rifle raised, as Carrick knelt beside a glowing console. He tapped commands in his language, shapes forming. In the air, a blue projection flickered to life maps of the planet, neural patterns, DNA spirals. This is what I found," he said breathlessly. "They're not natural. The creatures. They're engineered, grown, designed to spread, to consume. Lex squinted at the shapes dancing before her. You mean they're weapons? Carrick nodded. But not just weapons. There's coordination, a signal. Something controls them. A hive mind, a queen, or a machine. We don't know. But it's real. She leaned closer, watching as a red dot blinked at the center of the planet. That's where it is, she asked. Carrick swallowed. Deep beneath the red scar, a chasm older than our civilization. Nothing comes back from there. Lex stood, slowly cracking her knuckles. Then that's where we go. Carrick hesitated, eyes wide. But no, the defenses. She cut him off. If we kill the mind, we kill the swarm. Simple math. Before Carrick could argue, a distant horn-like roar shook the temple walls. Dust rained from the ceiling. The ground itself trembled beneath their feet. Lex rushed to the entrance and peered into the jungle. Her heart skipped a beat. A new monster had entered the fight. Taller than any she'd seen, a behemoth of spines and smoke, glowing with eerie light from beneath its plated hide. It moved with unnatural purpose, like it was seeking something specific. A leader. Lex spun around. We need to move, now. They gathered what supplies they could. A single Viren flyer half broken, held together with old wiring and prayer still, sat behind the temple. Lex threw Carrick into the pilot's seat, kicked the console until it lit up, and pulled back on the controls. With a scream of dying engines, the ship lurched into the air. Below them, the temple disappeared in flame. They flew low, dodging between dead trees and rising smoke columns. Lex kept her eyes on the distance. The red scar loomed ahead and open. Wound in the planet's surface, miles wide and hundreds deep, hidden by storm clouds and volcanic mist. But before they could reach it, Lex's helmet flickered. A voice, human. Scout Team Echo, this is Earth Command. Signal received. Drop zones. Confirmed. Deathworlder fleet descending. Lex blinked. For a second, she didn't believe it. But then the sky split. Black ships, sharp and jagged like blades, tore through the clouds. Human destroyers, troop carriers, and gunships descended like thunder. Drop pods rained from the heavens, each one carrying a Deathworlder Earth's elite. They hit the ground like falling stars. Lex grinned, blood still drying on her cheek. Looks like the cavalry's early. Carrick stared, eyes wide in awe. You're not just soldiers, he whispered. You're monsters. Lex didn't answer. She didn't have to. The swarm was already reacting, shrieking louder, faster. The skies filled with wings. The earth cracked as more creatures rose from their burrows. The war had just escalated. A beeping sound pulled her attention back to the console. The flyer was failing. Engines sparked. Altitude dropped. Lex pulled the ship hard to the right, trying to steer them toward a rocky outcrop near the edge of the scar. The flyer spun, then crashed. Metal screamed. Trees shattered. The world spun sideways. When Lex crawled from the wreckage, her shoulder burned, and Carrick was coughing again. But they were alive. Barely. And in front of them, wrapped in shadow and steam, stood the red scar. A hole into the planet's heart. Something deep inside it was waiting. Lex chambered a fresh round into her rifle and looked toward the abyss. Time to finish this, she said. Asterisk, The wreckage smoldered behind them as Lex Rider pulled herself. From the ruins of the Viren flyer, blood running down her temple, smoke stinging her eyes. Carrick coughed violently beside her, covered in soot and tangled in straps. Around them, the landscape was dead charred trees, blackened ground, and cracks in the soil that pulsed with heat. The edge of the red scar loomed just beyond a rocky ridge, a vast canyon that split the planet like a wound. A strange hum filled the air, deep and unnatural, vibrating through Lex's bones. The hive was close. Lex helped Carrick to his feet. "We go in fast," she said, voice hoarse. "We find the Queen, the core, whatever's running this mess, and end it." But as they turned toward the jagged path into the scar, a shadow passed. Over them, a shape landed on the ridge above with a crash that shook the ground. It wasn't like the other creatures. This one was worse. It stood nearly 20 meters tall, wrapped in glistening armor made of bone and black metal. Its limbs were elongated, elegant and deadly, with blades jutting from its wrists and a tail. Like a living whip, red lights pulsed in its chest. But it wasn't just its body that made Lex's breath catch, it was the voice. "I am Synix," it said in perfect, polished Viren, "Warden of the Hive Mind. You should have died with your kind, Deathworlder." Lex raised her rifle, didn't blink. "You talk. That's new." Synix tilted its head, then leapt. The world exploded around her. Lex rolled aside, missing a swipe that shattered stone like glass. She fired, bullets sparking off Synix's armored chest. The creature spun, swinging its tail, forcing Lex to dive again. Carrick scrambled for cover, shouting something Lex couldn't hear over the sound of gunfire and screams. Then the sky answered, from above. Earth's fleet finally descended. In full force, dropships screamed through the air, black steel hulls trailing flame. From their bellies, pods ejected, slamming into the ground like meteors. Each one cracked open to reveal a Deathworlder soldier, massive, armored, ready for war. One soldier landed directly behind Synix and charged without hesitation, swinging a kinetic hammer that connected with a thunderclap, knocking the monster off balance. Lex didn't waste the chance. She grabbed Carrick and ran toward the edge of the scar as explosions thundered behind her. Synix roared, rallying lesser creatures to its side. But the human shock troopers were already engaging, their weapons tearing through the swarm in a blaze of gunfire and light. Lex and Carrick reached the canyon's edge. The ground sloped steeply downward into a tunnel network glowing with sickly green light. The walls breathed alive, pulsing, slick with organic matter. The hive wasn't just a place. It was a living structure, connected to everything the swarm touched. Inside, the temperature dropped. Strange clicks echoed through the darkness. The air felt thick, pressing on Lex's chest like deep water. Her HUD flickered, interference crackling through the signal. Carrick guided her through the tunnels, using his scanner to trace the signal he had found before, the one tied to the hive mind. It pulsed steadily, like a heartbeat. As they descended, the walls changed. Veins of glowing material stretched across the ceilings. In places, they passed half-formed creatures hanging in fleshy pods. Some were dead. Some twitched. "She's close," Carrick whispered. They reached a chamber so vast it felt like a cathedral, but twisted and wrong. The ceiling arched high above them, covered in glowing sacks and thorned roots. At the center of the chamber, suspended, In a web of organic tendrils was the queen. She was massive. Her body was a fusion of insect, machine, and nightmare. Her face, if it could be called that, was a mask of crystal and flesh, and behind it, a single massive eye began to open. Lex raised her rifle, but before she could fire, her vision blurred. A sound, too deep to hear, rang inside her skull. Her arms trembled. Her mind swam. Then she heard the voice, not with her ears, but inside her head. "You are too late, human." Lex gasped, staggering backward. Carrick screamed, falling to his knees, hands clutching his temples. The queen's thoughts weren't words. They were pressure, darkness, intent. She wasn't angry. She was curious. "You think killing me will stop it?" The voice said. "This is only one nest. I am not the mind. I am a thread in the web." Lex forced herself to move. She aimed, but her hand shook. Every breath felt heavy. Carrick looked up, pale and terrified. "She's in our heads. She's connected to everything. She's learning us." The queen twitched, tendrils curling tighter. The air thickened with heat. From the tunnels behind them, Lex could hear the sound of footsteps, many, fast. Creatures were coming. Thousands. Lex grabbed Carrick and pulled him behind a pillar of bone. Her heart pounded in her ears. They were surrounded, cut off, no signal. No backup. And still, the queen's voice whispered in her mind, mocking her, studying her. Then, faintly, her helmet picked up a signal again. A human voice. It was Earth Command. Double quotes Lex. "If you're alive. Confirm your beacon. We're aligning the Soul Lance. Target coordinates required." Lex stared at the queen, at the web, at the living hive that stretched miles beneath them. She touched her wrist com, sent the signal. Then she whispered, "Burn it all." Above, far above the surface, the largest ship in the Deathworlder fleet adjusted its orbit. The Soul Lance, a weapon of impossible power, began to charge. The queen's eye widened. Her voice changed from calm to furious. "What have you done?" Lex stared back at her, breathing hard. "You messed with the wrong species." Not with the mouth, but with the walls, the air, the soil itself. The entire hive shook, the living tunnels writhing like they were in agony. Lex Rider held her ground in the center of the great chamber, arm raised, beacon pulsing. Carrick crouched beside her, shielding his head as shrieks and howls echoed all around them. The swarm was coming, rushing down every tunnel, pouring toward the queen like blood drawn to a wound. Lex's cum crackled. Soul Lance charging. 60 seconds. To impact. Confirm final position. Target locked, she said through clenched teeth. We're sitting on the hive core. From the shadows, the first wave arrived. A dozen creatures burst into the chamber, claws clattering against the floor. Their eyes glowed red with rage, but they didn't attack her. Not yet. Instead, they circled, waiting, like wolves around. A dying flame. Lex stepped in front of Carrick and raised her rifle. One shot left. She waited, steady, counting her breaths. The queen twitched, sensing the danger, tendrils lashing at the air, her massive body pulsing with raw energy. You will die here, the voice said in Lex's mind, deeper now, more desperate. Even if your weapon strikes, I will live in others. We are already everywhere. Lex didn't reply, because she was already moving. The creatures lunged. She fired her last shot into the face of the largest one, then dove to the left, scooping up a dropped Viren blade from the floor. She slashed at a second monster, ducked under the claws of a third, and drove the blade into its gut. It screamed and burst into green mist. Carrick shouted her name, pointing. The queen had broken free from some of her restraints. One of her massive arms now reached toward the ceiling, toward a pulsing vein of organic light, feeding, trying to protect herself. Lex ran dot. She sprinted straight for the queen, dodging, lashing. Tentacles, blades missing her by inches. The queen roared, the noise shaking her bones. Lex jumped, grabbed a fleshy tendon hanging low, and swung upward. Landing hard on the queen's carapace, she stabbed the blade deep, anchoring herself. The queen shrieked in rage, thrashing, trying to shake her loose. But Lex was already pulling something from her side pouch, an old earth explosive, primed and blinking. "Let's see how immortal you really are," she growled. She jammed the explosive between two ridged plates near the base of the queen's skull and kicked herself free, falling hard to the floor. Pain exploded in her ribs. Carrick ran to her, dragging her behind a shattered pillar dot above. The queen twisted violently, light flashing through her veins. The swarm hesitated, confused, then furious. The cum in Lex's helmet crackled again. Soul Lance charged, firing in 5. She grabbed Carrick's arm, pulled him close, and whispered, "Brace." 4. A sound began in the distance. A deep rumble. 3. The queen let out one final, furious scream and launched herself toward them. 2. Lex closed her eyes. 1. The sky cracked open. From orbit, the Soul Lance fired. A beam of pure energy, brighter than a star, struck the planet like the wrath of a god. It punched through the clouds, through the surface, and deep into the red scar. The entire hive erupted. The queen was vaporized instantly, her scream cut off mid-thought. The explosion expanded outward, tearing through the organic walls, incinerating every creature within miles. The tunnels collapsed, the ground above shattered, and a column of light surged into the sky. Lex and Carrick were thrown through the air, heat washing over them like a tidal wave. Everything went white dot, then black dot dash silence dot. Lex woke to dust, smoke, and a faint sound of crackling fire. The world was ruined. The hive was gone. She sat up slowly, her body aching, her armor scorched, her mouth dry. "Carrick." She croaked. A groan answered her. The Viren scientist lay a few meters away, burned but alive. She crawled to him, pulled him up. They were lying at the edge of a massive crater, still glowing faintly from the blast. Nothing remained of the queen. No movement, no swarm. Just silence. Her cum buzzed. "This is Earth Command. We confirm strike was successful. Sensors show the hive signal is gone. Repeat, hive is gone." Lex didn't speak. She just stared into the glowing pit, breathing heavily. But then a sound. Faint, distant, wrong. Carrick stiffened. "Do you hear that?" It was a hum, no. A pulse. Lex reached for her rifle, forgot it was empty, and stood from beneath the crater. Something flickered. Carrick backed away. "That's not possible. The queen, she's dead." The ground trembled. Lex narrowed her eyes. From the center of the crater, a new structure was rising, not alive. Mechanical, Hexagonal plates clicked into place. Lights ignited blue, not red. A cold intelligence, sharp and fast. Then a voice spoke, not in her head, but aloud. Hive node lost. Activating secondary protocol. New core online. Carrick whispered, horrified. It wasn't a queen. It was a seed. Lex took a slow step back. Above them, Earth's fleet was descending fast, deploying squads across the planet, cheering in. Victory. But Lex knew this wasn't over. The Deathworlder fleet had won the battle, but something else had just awakened.